Welcome everyone. Very good evening. Very nice to be again, bringing on another speaker on PitchCamp. We are on our first news episode of the Sales, Leadership and Growth Marketing series. Thank you so much for everyone joining in. So, if you don't mind, folks, while we wait for others to join, let me ask a quick question. You can use the questions tab on the right. You can pop in an answer to this question. What's your number one marketing challenge today?
Yeah, I would love for this to be an interactive session. In fact, I don't have any slides prepared, so I might reference slides, but I would love for this to be an interactive session. So shoot any questions you have, and I'd be happy to answer them. And my vested interest in all of this is that somebody brings up something that I absolutely have no clue on, and then I get to go back and learn more about that. So that is that's something that I look forward to as well. So yeah, any kind of questions are welcome.
So it doesn't matter whether you're a startup, a large enterprise, you're from a digital marketing agency. It really doesn't matter. So all of us face marketing challenges. Praveen has a question on which is the best campaign you have seen under $1,000 budget.
$1,000 is a lot.
What's your number one marketing challenge? It's always that one thing. We solve that one thing well. Pretty much downstream, a lot of things get solved. So that's why I'm just trying to focus to get what's your number one marketing challenge today. Wonderful. So let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining in. So my name is Bimlesh Gundurao and I run PitchCamp. It's a new initiative to help people and professionals to share their ideas with the world better. We do this via coaching and training boot camps to help you pitch to your investors and to your customers. This is a new series that we are starting today on the growth, marketing and leadership series, and I'm very excited to have our speaker, Roshan Cariappa, a very good friend of mine. And we've known each other since 2013. We both were NASSCOM Product Conclave volunteers, and we've been good professional friends. We've also had a couple of business relationships in the past, and I'm very excited to bring his perspectives forward to share on the PitchCamp platform. This entire knowledge series that we have put together, we did a 9-week series on sales for entrepreneurs, and we're going to bring in some excellent growth marketing and sales leaders on this series as well. So with this, Roshan, welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks for being on PitchCamp.
Hey, thank you so much, Bimlesh. Calling it professional friends, it hurts me a little bit. It discounts also the number of beers that we've had together. Yeah, Bimlesh is doing a fantastic job with PitchCamp, right? There is a lot of content out there. I think there is no dearth of knowledge in terms of how to execute, but there is a real dearth of knowledge in terms of experiential learning, right? So in terms of bringing perspectives from operators, and initiatives like PitchCamp are I would say extremely beneficial for people because it gives you knowledge from people who are hands-on battling these problems on a daily basis. So really appreciate what you're doing for the startup community. And this is not something new. Bimlesh has been doing this on and off for the last 7 or 8 years now. So yeah, very good.
Fantastic.
Really excited to be a part of this.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you for the kind words. So let's get this going. We've got a very exciting audience and also a bunch of topics that I would like to cover as well. So talk to us quickly about your background. Give us some context on your love for marketing and and where and what do you do at VYMO right now, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So my love for marketing is entirely incidental. How they say true love creeps up on you. You don't go seeking it out, right? So I have worked at early stage, growth stage startups for almost about 12 to 13 years now. And I've done the 0 to 1 journey multiple times, both as an entrepreneur and as an operator. And I've managed cross-functional teams, product sales, marketing. At this point of time, I head marketing for VYMO. I've been with VYMO for about 3 years. We're doing phenomenally well. And some of the things that make me unique or make my perspective unique is the fact that I've been an entrepreneur, so I optimize for impact. I may say some things which are extremely scandalous to conventional marketers, right? So feel free to discard them. Feel free to stress test everything that I say. Don't buy any of the BS that I put out there. Anyway, in any case, I only put out stuff that I've actually tested for myself. The second is I'm a huge fan of learning by first principles. So I have almost entirely learned everything by first principles. I don't have an MBA, neither did I neither did I work with like a CMO or someone who taught me those marketing principles. So everything I've learned is from a first principles basis. And I love to learn and share, and excited to be here and talk to you guys about things that are top of your mind and things I can help you with. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Also, I think as I mentioned earlier, I'd love for this to be more interactive, and I'd love to answer questions that you have. I have a couple of slide decks. I can point you to them. They can be like a good reference material if you need. But what I really would like for us to do is to engage in conversation and really unpack some elements around whatever it is that you're working on.
Roshan, why don't we first kick this off? So there are two types of challenges, right? One, predominantly, startups focusing on the technology side don't come with a strong marketing sense or a marketing background, right? And then second, you have a growth stage companies, pretty much like yours, where leaders like you come in, they set up a team, they set up a function, and then take this forward. So my fundamental question is, as a young bootstrapped or even an angel funded company, when do you start thinking of marketing, and how marketing is critical in your product market fit stage as well? So talk to us a little bit about it before we get into growth stage.
I think that's an excellent question, and it's something that I get all the time. I work with a lot of founders as well. I advise them. And it's something that comes at me all the time, which is, when do I start building out a marketing team, or, am I ready for marketing as a function? See, in my opinion, marketing is a force multiplier. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you're having one-on-one conversations at this point of time, marketing is a mode of multiplying that one-on-one conversation at scale. So think about it. If you're pre-product market fit, it can help you get to product market fit sooner, faster, better, right? It can help you iterate faster on your product and positioning. And if you are at product market fit, then it's putting gasoline on the fire, right? So it can help you accelerate and scale your business that much faster.
Wonderful.
So I look at marketing as a force multiplier, and depending on at what point you personally feel that you need one or the other, incidentally, you will always require one or the other. You need to sort of employ marketing methods, right? I don't mean go and hire 5 people. Like, typically what I notice is, especially funded startups do this mistake of saying, hey, that particular Fortune 500 or 100 marketing team looks like this. They have like 3 content marketers, 1 SEO marketer, 1 whatever, right? And they will go out in the market and pay top dollar to hire all of these people on day 0. That doesn't work. That simply doesn't work. Okay, because a lot of these elements in terms of what messages, what channels are relevant for you are extremely organic. You have to sort of go through that journey, right? There are certain principles to help you not make certain mistakes and, tread off the road that, off the virtuous path as such. But then to think that on day 0 you will have this team and they will execute at scale is very foolhardy, right?
Right.
So I would say if you're starting out a marketing team, hire a couple of generalists, and generalists are often code for interns, right? So hire a couple of interns, try a bunch of things out, and then scale as you go, right? A year from now, if you try enough things, you will understand what channels work, what messages work, what skills you need to deploy, where you need to hire, what you need to do, etc. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, fantastic. I put up a team of interns and we experiment on a couple of these channels. So during this experiment, you end up burning a lot of money, or even that little bit of money that you have. So how do you optimize and figure out in the early days what channels to go after?
See, marketing, again, there's a misnomer that marketing is something that's expensive, right? You have to spend X amount of dollars on, ads and this and that and whatever. To my mind, you can sort of substitute dollars with creativity up to a certain extent, right?
Sure.
At least in the very early stages, if you can be creative, if you can hustle, if you can run really hard, then there is no reason why you cannot outcompete even those with some amount of money on the marketing front, right? Let me give you a few examples. Email is next to nothing. Email costs next to nothing, right? Social media costs next to nothing. Yeah, so we were talking about $0 marketing or bootstrap marketing as such, right? And I was essentially saying that there are plenty of channels where it costs us next to nothing, right? Email lists costs you next to nothing. Social media costs you next to nothing. Even going out there and doing a little bit of an event or an activation initiative costs you next to nothing, right? It costs you time and effort, but that is just a minimum. That is something that you have to kind of deploy, right? To check if things work, and you have to do that. But aside from that, I think this notion of marketing being really expensive is sort of a hangover from the corporate marketing era, where you saw, billboards and TVCs and so on and so forth, right? I think sometime around, I would argue even earlier, I mean, there were people who were really ingenious about, how to spend on marketing. But I would say, the whole digital marketing aspects changed marketing forever, right? I mean, you could do very good marketing at extremely bootstrapped budgets. So even us at VYMO, we are not big spenders at all, right? So we are extremely prudent with our money, and we run really hard and we do a bunch of things, but we don't spend as much. In fact, I would say, in similar terms, I think we probably have a fifth of the budget that other comparable, maybe less actually, probably less than a fifth of the budget that other comparable startups deploy on marketing.
So today, marketing is looked as is considered as one of the primary functions for lead generation, right? And even now we consider content marketing as very important to generate both brand awareness, product awareness, and as well as generate interest too for consumers or target audience to engage with your product or with your brand. Do you see content marketing still to be relevant even now, even in 2020?
It depends what kind of product. It depends what kind of market that you're going after, right? So let me qualify that a little bit. If you are, let's say, a $3,000 ACV product, then obviously discovery becomes through digital, right? Online. So top of the funnel becomes extremely important, and part of the discovery process is content, essentially, right? I mean, your content being on multiple different platforms, attracting people on the web through top of the funnel content, essentially, right? And as you sort of move towards the right, and let's say you go past the 50K ACV or even towards the 150K ACV, your content marketing starts looking more like product marketing, right? Which is use cases, case studies, those kind of things, reports, those kind of things, right? Now, I'm a big fan of hashing both things out, right? There are elements you can use from the left-hand side and elements you can use from the right-hand side. If you look at the left-hand side, the kind of content is extremely lucid, because essentially you're selling to one person, and likely the person that you're selling to is both the decision maker and the user, right? But if you look at the right-hand side, the content is extremely dense, because the person who's making the decision might actually be a C-level person, and the person who's using it may be like 4 levels down, right? Okay. The kind of content that you're producing on the right-hand side is for the C-level person to consume, right? And not really for the person who's actually using it to consume. You can actually mix and match this. On the left-hand side, they make the big mistake of not being centered around business. So I work with a lot of SaaS products as well, right? And one of the primary mistakes they do is, they come off as a nice to have. They don't center it around business metrics, right? There are only two kinds of businesses. Either you help increase revenue or you reduce costs. So your product or solution has to do one of those things, and your value has to be pegged to one of those things. Now, it's very easy to get carried away on your communication to do neither.
Right.
You're solving a problem, but then it's not pegged to the dollar. Okay, and that's something that especially I see on the left hand side. So Slack, for example, can say this is the new place to work. They can do that. They have 100 salespeople out there pushing the solution there. Slack is enterprise right now.
Right.
They have that right now, but you don't have that, right? And especially in these times that we're living in, where people are tight with the dollar, you have to be mindful of the fact that someone wants to see an uptick either in revenue or a reduction in costs. One of those things from a communication perspective.
Right.
So on the left hand side, people should kind of peg themselves to business metrics. On the right hand side, the opposite problem happens. On the right hand side, people are all about numbers and facts and figures and whatever. They miss the storytelling element to it. Nobody cares at the end of the day that my industry grew like 25%, and you see these facts, right? 7 out of 10 people said this,
right.
and 14 out of 9 people said this, and sometimes I look at them and I wonder, like, who are these people, right? I mean, are these like, do you have a marketing team, and do you push these questions around to the marketing team or what? So they do a very bad job on the right hand side of actually telling people why they should use the product. So this is the sort of a balance that we'll have to strike, right? On the left hand side, you have to center it around business. On the right hand side, you have to center the story around why someone should actually use your product, right? Aside from the facts and figures on how the industry is moving and how dozens of your competitors are doing and whatever, which is important, no doubt. But that's the correction that I see. That's the balance that I see.
I think as a leading segue to this topic, we have a question coming in. Mm-hmm. This is from Aishwarya Raman. Yes. For a company who wants to bring in more sales leads, how can content marketing help us to do that? There's another similar question on lead generation, which is again towards channel and lead generation. How do I find out which channel can help me get the maximum leads for the money that I spend? The money that I spend could be on people within the team. Or it could be on the resources to build that content. So, there are these two questions that are coming.
So, if I understood correctly, it's about how content can generate leads. That's the basic premise of the question.
Correct.
See, in the low ticket ACV sort of a business, content can add a lot of top of the funnel momentum for you, right? So, which is that your business is entirely going to be website driven, right? So, it's going to be a see, click and buy kind of product, right? I'm assuming, if it's on the left hand side. Right? So which means getting people through the front door, and the front door in this case is the website, right, is extremely important. And the way your website can be discoverable is through content, right? This content you could share on affiliate websites, social media, your own personal blogs, whatever it is. The thing you have to be mindful of there is to not get really spammy and just simply direct people onto your website, because there is a certain amount of fatigue that sets in when I've seen the same landing page 3 times, when I've seen the same landing page even twice, actually.
Right.
Bring the person in for a reason, right, and give that person something of value to stay. So the era that we are living in right now at this point of time is the build the audience era. People are building an audience even before they have a product for that audience. Content becomes a thing that you can center your audience around. It's a nice layer to wrap this audience around. So let me give you a few different examples. If you look at Webflow, a lot of content on no code. They own that movement. If you look at Gainsight, they own the customer success category. If you look at Drift or Intercom, conversational marketing, and these are guys who've actually written out, forget about blogs or whatever, they've actually published books on this. They're giving something of value to these people for them to engage this audience more meaningfully, not just simply directing them onto a website. Because trust me on this, at best, I mean, after 2 times, that landing page is no longer useful for me, unless something circumstantially has changed for me. Use the content as a way to engage your audience and not just simply direct them onto a landing page or a website. In terms of leads, of course, I mean, content can help you with discoverability, right? It can also help you a great deal with engagement. It can also help you a great deal with understanding what that positioning has to be, right, from a marketing perspective. Because the first marketing message that you make up, even if you talk to like a I don't know, 10, 15, 20 people is hypothetical. It's a theory at that point of time. I'm sorry, it's not a theory, it's a hypothesis at that point of time. You have to continuously validate that hypothesis with the prospect. And that process of validating happens only when you have an engaged audience, when you complete that loop per se. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, content helps a great deal with top of the funnel, right? In terms of getting people in through the front door, right? The other content that, people possibly ignore is the middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel content, right? Which is the use case content, which is the competitive analysis content, the battle cards. Those are things that, people miss. I routinely talk to founders who have no idea how their product is different from the other, or they don't have a structured answer for that. Right? You talk to any product marketing person at a large enough company and you ask them, hey, why is your product different from product number Y or product A in that market? And he will have a 3-bullet answer for that. He or she will have the 3-bullet answer, right? And that is something because they worked on it, right? And if you look at awareness, consideration, and decision, the consideration and decision parts are like, is when someone is like, closer to the door, closer to buying a product. So it really should be a no-brainer to have like 20 variations on those things, right? Is to have a follow-up deck, to have that use case template, is to have the battle cards and everything. You should not be fighting at that point of time to make up stuff for them, right? So I would say content, top of the funnel, bring in the leads, as well as middle and bottom of the funnel to accelerate those leads to closure. That's how you have to look at content.
Yeah, so in this bottom and towards closure, or moving it to qualifying that lead and moving it toward the sales team to help them to close. So what you're saying is you've got to have content which will serve for different levels of engagement.
Correct.
Not just at the top of the funnel, but as they move into the various stages of funnel, have specific content that will engage with the audience. Fantastic. So one of the next topic that this leads into is marketing is a game of experiments, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's like the stock market results, right? So what I was saying was, marketing is a game of experiments, and you got to constantly run experiments, measure them to see whether this experiment worked, and so on. So I have two questions here. So one, how do you measure effectiveness of a marketing initiative or a specific campaign or an experiment that you run? Second, how critical it is for both team members and for the marketing leaders or managers like you to build that mindset of experimentation?
That's a very deep and profound question. I'm trying to bring up a slide, if possible, that can illustrate this better. So this is in general about how I think about metrics, right? And it's easier to sort of think about metrics for individual campaigns because you can always figure some way to kind of measure them, right? So either through leads or through impressions or through clicks or through website visits and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. There's always some way of measuring individual campaigns. But if you look at like a North Star metric for your team itself, right? In terms of what that should be, you have to sort of pick that North Star metric for a bunch of things that you do, like an aggregate of activities that you do, right? And if you look at your journey as a startup, in terms of momentum, efficiency, and scale, momentum when you have nothing and you have to gain ground, efficiency when you have some momentum and you have to kind of speeden the pace, and then scale at a point where you're extremely predictable in terms of let's say for $10 million of revenue, I need to build pipeline of $25-30 million, and it will translate, right? That amount of predictability at scale. These are the metrics that I would say are important at each point in time, right? At the momentum stage, obviously your top of the funnel metrics are super important, right? Whether you measure it in terms of number of leads, number of meetings, even number of activities and campaigns that you do, right? So one of the things that happened last quarter, we were one of the first few people to kind of react to the whole COVID situation and say, hey, you know what, this doesn't look good. We will have to change a few things, right? Mm-hmm. And like Louis Gersner said, it's only the paranoid who survive. Last quarter, part of the reason why we had our best quarter at VYMO from a marketing perspective is because we panicked early, right? So we simply doubled our campaigns, the number of campaigns we did. Okay, to give you, just a small indication of that, I think we probably did one webinar a week, right?
Okay.
So you can imagine, finalizing the content, acquiring the speaker, audience acquisition, nurture, qualification, etc. Right? For 12 weeks straight, 12 webinars. Okay. In fact, we ended up doing close to 20 plus, I feel, if you count like geographies, 5 different geographies that we operate in. Right? So at the momentum stage, these are things that would be extremely important from a metric perspective. At the stage of efficiency, I would say, it matters more on the conversions, right? So what percentage of your MQL is converting to SQL? How can you improve that? What percentage of your SQL is converting to opportunity? How can you accelerate your opportunities to closure, and so on and so forth, right? That's very important, because a percentage increase there can mean a huge uptick in your deal closures itself, right? So that is something that you have to be mindful about. And at scale, it's I can confidently say neither of us, none of us on this call are at that situation right now, but it's something that you have to be mindful of, is to get to a point where you know exactly how much opportunity will give you how much revenue, right? And how much it will cost for me to build that opportunity. I would love to know, for instance, that with a certain degree of accuracy, to know that for this much amount of revenue I will have to generate this much amount of opportunity, and for this much amount of opportunity I will have to put in this much amount of spend, and for this spend it has to go into X, Y, and Z channels in this percentage, and that translates into X, whatever number of activities, right? Or whatever kinds of activities on a daily basis. So I would love to have that amount of predictability, and it's something that all of us have to strive for, right? So a few principles on how you should think about metrics, right? Especially in marketing, we make the mistake of coming up with these vanity metrics, right? I have seen some MQLs being defined in such a way that they have no relevance to a business at the end of the day, right? You should always tie your metrics, whether it's MQL, SQL, whatever it is, that you're getting, to some kind of a revenue metric, right? It has to be a proxy for revenue, otherwise it's useless, right? And the other thing is, if you're running fast enough, if you're doing things at a regular pace, then you will have to revise it almost on a quarterly basis, right? Things that were relevant to VYMO 3 years back are not relevant to us now, right? And that's something that, as a marketing leader or a founder, you have to keep revising those things to make it as relevant as possible, right? Today we're at a point where we qualify things up till we call it an SQL 20, right? So we handed off an SQL 10, right? So we handed off at that stage to sales, and it makes things a lot more predictable from their point of view, right? And third thing, obviously, you should report your metrics regularly. Have some kind of an MIS. Keep sharing this. Don't be shy about those things. Good ideas can come from anywhere, but you should do that regularly, right? Yeah.
So can you talk about some samples of these metrics, what you mentioned for MQLs?
So the way we define MQL is someone who has shown interest, right? Interest qualifies as someone who wants to know more about VYMO, right? That could be either through a demo, that could be either through a webinar, that could be either through a campaign, etc. Someone who has shown interest and is also from our ICP. From our ideal customer persona. So that would be a top of the funnel MQL, right? Okay. And SQL for us would have to be temp qualified, right? Temp is basically trigger, enabler, mobilizer, profile, right? So this is how we look at it. Trigger, engagement, mobilizer, profile. I always get that wrong. So trigger is basically some compelling event that has happened, right? Engagement is that you have a next step with that person. He's given you a demo or a meeting. right? Mobilizer is the person, may not necessarily be a decision maker, but he should at least be an influencer of some kinds, right? So that basically selects the type of person. And profile is obviously, the person and the company has to be someone that can be an ideal customer for VYMO, right? So that is something we call an SQL.
Moving on, talk to us on building a sustainable marketing engine. So now you're a leader. You've been around with VYMO for about 3 years now. Talk to me about some of the things that really matter to you as a marketing leader when you're.
Okay, please talk more on momentum stage, how to think about campaigns, what kind of campaigns, how many in each month, etc. Okay, that's a very good question. Let me try to answer that as best as possible. Let me pull up a slide if there is one on campaigns. If I look at campaigns, right, it serves a couple of different purposes, and I put these on the x-axis and I define demand generation on the left-hand side and sales acceleration on the right-hand side, right? So your campaign has to be doing one of these two, right? If it's doing neither, then I think it's time pass, right? It has to generate demand, whether it's leads, opportunities, whatever it is, deals, etc., or it has to accelerate existing opportunities to closure in some way, right? And that could be, brand campaigns are excellent at that, and so on. You won't believe it. A year back, we gave one of our one senior stakeholder a bottle of champagne, congratulating him on having a fantastic year ahead, right? And it all happened. I mean, let me take a step back and explain that properly. So we were at an offsite in Goa where we realized that one of the large banks also were having an offsite there, and it so happened that we were working with a different channel in that bank. We found out who the topmost person there was, and we sent him a bottle of champagne with a note signed by our CEO in the night that said, "Hey, thanks so much for being a client. Incidentally, one of your channel's users. Congrats on a fantastic year, and hope you have a great year ahead." That's it, right? And you will not believe it. A year from now, incidentally, today, right? Coincidence of coincidence that I'm talking about it today. Today, the person has reached out with a requirement, right, saying that we have this particular need, and I just thought of you guys, and that you guys would be relevant for this, right? So, in any case, what I'm saying is that essentially your campaigns have to belong to one or the other, and you should sort of make up your mind about it, right? I mean, if it falls somewhere in between, then you really don't know what you want out of that campaign. Always understand that it has to do one or the other, right? At least in proportion, right? So in the momentum stage, what you're trying to do is find product market fit, right? So you're trying to have as many conversations, figure out who is most relevant for your product. So I would say, do as many campaigns as possible, figure as many channels as possible, talk to as many prospects from different industries, from different use cases as possible to zero in on who is relevant for you, right? At the efficiency stage, you have one or two channels that are working for you. Let's say, events is working very well for you. Become a master at that, right? So try to scale it to an extent that tomorrow, no matter who's there in your team or no matter what happens, right, you're still going to generate that amount of demand, or it's going to be just as useful to you as a channel, right? And start evaluating other channels that you can sort of employ, right? The goal here is to double down on efficiency on the channel that's working for you, and also become channel agnostic at some level, right? COVID has been a fantastic example of that. So literally 40 to 50% of our pipeline was coming from events. As of last year, COVID strikes and poof, events as a channel is gone, right? And we've been able to pivot wonderfully to digital events, webinars, demos, and so on, right? And sustain that same amount of demand, right? So try to be channel agnostic as much as possible. So to answer your specific question, at the momentum stage, it's super important for you to not just double down on whatever channel is working for you, but also find newer channels that you can sort of master, right? People get hung up about channels, because there is really a countless ways that you can find your find the person that you have to engage, right? But it's always important to think about it, like take a step back and think about it at a very elementary level, right? So how do you decide? You figure who your ICP is, right? You identify that particular ICP, you figure what's relevant for them, right? And then after that, I mean, the channel is just incidental, right? In this case, I mean, you have a well fleshed out ICP who's Sandra, who's a CMO at a big corporation. What does she care about most? Where does she exist? How should I reach her, right? And then you figure out what the campaign should be. So I'm a big fan of Nassim Taleb, and some of his quotes are most relevant for marketing and for life as well, right? So never ask people what they want, watch what they do, right? So watch what your ICPs are doing, and I'm sure you'll find a way to reach them on a campaign.
Thanks, Roshan. We have another question from Vijay Saradi.
Hi, Roshan.
Vijay?
Hey, Vijay.
I was just following the conversation. It's pretty interesting. I like this term that you said that marketing is all about being a force multiplier. I still remember that jargon. So, coming to my question, as you rightly mentioned, even Bimlesh was mentioning, marketing is about generating demand or growing the demand. How do you see marketeers like you and me in a company right now playing a critical role at these times where our main job is to create and manage the demand, just not one time, but it's going to be a long-term perspective, right? So when organizations are kind of pessimistic about growth, how do you think, at least from your end, you're tackling that challenge of promising as a marketing head, saying, hey, you don't need to worry, growth is going to be there. And what kind of measurements you're taking, and also as a team head, how are you promising this to your team members? Yeah.
Fantastic question, Vijay, and I can assure the audience that I haven't planted this question. So Vijay, I didn't force Vijay to ask me this question, right? But it just so happens that it's a very nice question that actually, I mean, the topic of this talk is precisely the answer to your question, Vijay, which is that, a lot of the marketers, a lot of the founders that I'm seeing are happy to kind of survive this, and I can really empathize with where they're coming from, right? I mean, things have been hit hard, right? If you were serving fashion, if you were serving retail industries, for example, it's gone to zero, right? And you have my full empathy, my full sympathy for that, right? That's an unfortunate situation that's happened, right? But for the rest of us, and I would say, again, picking a random number, I would say 50% of us who are not in that situation where all our industries have gone to zero, right? This is not just a time for you to survive, but this is actually a time to gain from this experience, right? So the reason why I picked anti-fragile is because anti-fragile is a very specific term. It's a technical term actually, and Taleb describes it as anything that gains from disorder, that gains from stresses, right? Not just survives it. So as a marketer, as a founder, you really have to think about it as to, how you can gain from this experience, right? And it could be from a strategic perspective, it could be from a tactical perspective. Let me give you a couple of examples, right? Strategically, you have two levers at your disposal, right? You have a product, you have positioning, right? That's pretty much it, right? No matter what business you are, you have two things at your disposal, which is product and positioning.
Right.
And now is the best time for you to stress test that product and positioning, right? Is your product really relevant? Is your positioning really relevant, right? Can you build out certain features that could be more relevant right now? Is there another way you should talk about your product? Is there another person you can be relevant for? So on and so forth, right? Let me kind of bring up a slide. I had a slide deck which was specifically on marketing in a crisis, and I'll try to see if I can bring up a relevant slide. Just give me a second, guys. So a few different ways you can actually gain from this experience, right? So one is figure if there are new stakeholders or new channels that could be relevant for you from a marketing perspective, right? Now, if I look at VYMO's case, VYMO was typically being sold to heads of businesses, heads of sales, heads of distribution at all of these different companies, right? And we were, as I mentioned, we were heavily offline, event-based, biased more towards the event-based thing, because obviously we're an enterprise solution, right? Nobody buys a 150K or upwards solution online. It's not a see, click and buy solution, right? And you won't find a CXO at any rate, who is going to come out and fill a demo form, right? So this was our let's say pre-COVID situation, right? Now post-COVID, something's changed, right? Post-COVID, what we realized was the CIO's office gained in how should I put it? Gained in importance, right? Because everyone was worried about business continuity. Okay, and we started seeing the CIO become a more important stakeholder in the whole buying process, right? And we try to figure, how can we be more relevant to this person, right? So we kind of looked at this person as a new stakeholder in itself, right? The channels right now, considering that, events are out of the question, and it will be so, at least for the rest of the year, right? We pivoted to demos and webinars and, those kind of things, digital events, as, I was saying earlier, right? And we've been able to keep up that momentum, in fact, gain from that as well, right? And what we've also started doing over the last 3-4 months is to be a lot more open about the ideas. I'm happy to share all of the ideas that have worked for us and really understand what's working for other people as such, right? So that we can really collaborate within teams, collaborate cross-functionally, collaborate outside of your organization, because we're all in this together, and you can kind of figure newer ways to be more relevant to your prospect and more relevant to your audience, right? So find new stakeholders, find new channels, become agnostic on both those fronts to a certain extent, right? The other thing is, and I was talking to you about product and positioning, right? There's this exercise called Jobs to be Done. I'm sure some of you would have heard of it. It's a fantastic exercise to understand, what is the real value that your product is delivering, right? To give you a very simple example, a person may want to go from point A to point B. Now, whether you build a car for that or whether you build a tractor for that depends on a bunch of other things, right? Figure out how and why the person wants to do something, and then build the particular product that matches that experience, right? The other elements in this are, can you figure an upsell? Can you figure a cross-sell? Because that's something, again, that's that's like a low-hanging fruit, right? Person who has already bought you is more likely to buy more from you than someone new on the market, right? And very often, especially startups, forget this. Okay, so find an upsell, cross-sell, and do not underestimate the amount of dollar that's on the table that's for the taking there, right? And most importantly, now is when you can make the whole transition from being a vitamin to a painkiller, from being something nice to have to something that's really, really essential, right? Jason Lumpkin is one of my favorite people in SaaS, and he has this quote that, very few apps are truly essential to begin with, but most of them do that journey and become absolutely essential or painkillers at some point of time. And you should never waste a crisis, because a crisis is when you can do that journey very, very effectively, right? The other thing I wanted to talk about was this, right? People sort of think of product market fit as one point in time, right? Where there's a magical inflection, and then after that you just keep doubling down on growth. But I'm sorry to say it doesn't happen like that. Even for a mature product like Salesforce, or whatever other product that you can think of, SaaS product that you can think of, they're continuously finding product market fit for a feature, for a solution, for an industry, for a geography, within some of these things as well, right? And it's always impacted by externalities, right? And crises always amplify, accelerate the trends that have already been in place, right? There's that meme, I'm sure all of you would have got it at some point in the last 3 or 4 months, which is who led digital transformation at your company, and the option was, one was CIO and the option 2 was COVID, right? And plenty of people know what the answer is, right? So never waste a crisis. A crisis is fantastic for you to kind of come out stronger from this, become more essential to your prospects,
Roshan, talk to us some of the from a marketing tool stack point of view. What are some of the tools that you have been using, that you rely on heavily, and any. So they say, right, it's always not about the tools, but it's also about the strategy behind using those tools. But today with digital marketing, having a great or having a good tool stack is also equally important today. So talk to us a little bit about tools before we either take on the next question or wrap this up.
Okay, there are a lot more eminent people than I am to talk about tools and automation, but I'll give you a few principles, right? And few of the things that have worked for me. One, do not select the tool before you have a workflows in place. Have processes and workflows in place. I am sure you will find a tool at some point of time that will match that process and workflow. Don't make the mistake of buying the tool and then figuring out how to use the tool, because you will make that will not induce success with you, right? Sure, I'll make a couple of exceptions here, right? There are some tools, for example, HubSpot, if used properly, can transform your marketing. Even Salesforce, if used properly, can be excellent for B2B sales, right? But it's a heck of a cognitive overload for you on day zero, especially if you're early, right? You're better off doing the workflow, what is possible, and then figuring out what tool you need to match, what tool you can use to kind of automate the workflow. Second thing, a lot of the tools out there in the market, and this is something that one of my favorite people on LinkedIn, Brian Burns, says, help you do dumb things faster. Don't do dumb things faster. Right? It always helps to have one-on-one conversations with your prospects, especially in your early stages. Please do not put them on an email sequence and leave them to eternity and banish them. Don't do that. Right? Don't do dumb things faster. Third, people overestimate the complexity of some of these tools, right? I understand about 7-8 years back, things would have been different, but I'm telling you, things are a lot more intuitive right now, way more intuitive right now. If you pick up a marketing automation tool, I'm sure that you will be able to figure things out in and out, right? Don't hire one person just whose only job is to maintain the automation. Don't do that. So these are 2 or 3 things that I would say are essential. Pick processes and workflows before tools. Don't do dumb things faster, right? I think people sort of overestimate how much has to be automated and how much you can deal in a one-to-one fashion, right? And third, I would say that marketing tools and technologies have evolved. It's not a skill set that very rarely I find a need for someone to be really specialized in just automation as such, right? Find a smart kid who can automate, but more important to have all of those processes and workflows defined properly before you do anything.
Right.
Have CRM, have a marketing automation tool, something so we use ActiveCampaign, right? And it does the job for us splendidly. We also started using Rollworks for ABM, right? It does cookie-based targeting, and at this point of time for us, that is really essential, right? Because considering that we're not reaching people through events, and then LinkedIn has its own challenges, right? ABM and retargeting we're doing through Rollworks.
Thank you so much, Roshan. This has been a pleasure. I apologize, there are some network issues from my end today.
No, that's absolutely fine. Fine. Thank you, Bimlesh. It was a pleasure being, co-hosting this with you. And thank you everyone for taking time out from your busy schedules to join. I really, really appreciate this. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any follow-up questions. I'm at Cariappa CK. I think Bimlesh can share a link after this with you guys. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I'm happy to learn and share. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we will open up for networking now. Please stick around. You can interact with fellow attendees and also meet and greet with Roshan as well, right? So there's a concept of social lounge. Click on a chair and you can interact one-on-one or one-to-many as well. So we'll look forward to see you there. Thank you. Thanks, Roshan.
Thank you.